Welcome to the Unexceptional Moms podcast. This is episode 20, and I sort of feel like we should have bells and whistles going off or something.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, that works.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about school choices for kids with disabilities. I am Erin Lorraine.
And I am Ellen Stumbo. And our guest today is Diane Grover, and I'm super excited that Diane is here. I've known Diane for 9 years. When my daughter was born with Down syndrome, Diane reached out to me. And Diane is the founder of the International Down Syndrome Coalition, and we got to work together. Yep. I was the director of communications, and I like to call myself Diane's assistant.
Yep.
And Diane is the owner of Dreamers Coffee, which is pretty incredible that she provides jobs for individuals with disabilities. So we're going to have links for that in the post. That's ellenstumbo.com/episode 20, and that's the number 20. So ellenstumbo.com/episode 20, and we're going to have links for that. But we're here to talk about school choices for kids with disabilities because between the three of us, we've covered every possible option.
Which I think is a good way to start this by saying there's no right choice. Everyone does what's best for their family and their child, and we've all done different things. So we thought this was just a good opportunity for us all to share so that you know kind of what kind of options we've had and our pros and cons to those options.
Yep. So that's mainly what we're going to talk about is the pros and cons, because we can't tell anybody what the right thing is for them or for their child. So, who wants to start?
Yeah. Go ahead, Ellen.
Okay. So for my family, we have done self-contained classrooms, and we have done inclusion. And we have full inclusion, and we have shared inclusion and special ed services. And to be honest, for me, for my kids personally, I think my least favorite was a self-contained classroom. And that is because my daughter was in a very small group, and she is very sensitive to behaviors, and she was actually very uncomfortable around some of the kids because of certain behaviors. So she spent most of the time trying to hide from those kids and not wanting to participate. So it made it really, really tough. And I don't know, Erin, actually, because your daughter has been a part of a self-contained classroom, maybe we can talk about it a little bit.
Let's just take 2 seconds, because I know that we often get messages from people who are not necessarily parents of children with special needs, but a lot of what we say applies to anyone who has children, and some people just think we're a little crazy, and that's fun too. So let's define some of this a little bit.
Yes.
A self-contained classroom, the easy way to say it, is all the children in there have special needs. And then kind of the opposite of that would be full inclusion, which would be when a child with special needs is in a regular classroom, with or without, depending on their needs, assistance.
Right.
Does that sum it up pretty well, you guys think?
Beautiful.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So yes, for Oksana started off full inclusion with a one-on-one paraprofessional who guided her through a variety of things throughout her day. That was kindergarten. She was in all the regular PE, despite her cerebral palsy. Like, our school is major inclusion supporters. As the years went by and her mental illness took over more and more, we started to see that was not a good setting for her anymore. And I could give you a million reasons why, but I'll give you one. Her behaviors were making children not want to be around her. And the goal of inclusion is that we want our kids to have typical friends, and we want them to love our kids and be around our kids and not be scared of disability or think disability is weird. And that's exactly what was happening. No one wanted to be around Oksana. She was hurting the kids sometimes. And so little by little, each year we pulled back a little more and a little more. Now she's completely self-contained. It is absolutely the best and safest place for her. She thrives in that small group. Right now, she does go into the regular classroom for social studies because they're studying something that's of great interest to her. And so that's been fun for her, but we include her in the regular classroom minimally and only when we absolutely know she can handle it. So, and we've gone as far as to put her in a special school. The whole school is all kids with behavior disorders because the school she was in could not handle her at the time. So we have done the gamut with Oksana. Mm-hmm. With Anya, the first year she came home, she was self-contained, and simply because her language wasn't developed, her emotional development wasn't there, just she hadn't been home for even a whole year yet. And so that was a good, safe environment for her, that smaller self-contained classroom. But by the next
side note, you adopted Anya, if people have not.
Yes.
Listen to us.
Yeah, Anya and Oksana.
She has Down syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. And that was a great choice for the first year. By the second year, she was ready to move on. And so we've had her fully included with a one-on-one at all times for the last few years. But this year, she's really struggling just understanding what's happening in the classroom and keeping up. So I'm going to say like we might kind of be at half and half now. So really with our kids, we do a real variety of things based on where they are at the time and what's best for them. And I have a great team at our school who agrees with me on that. And we make adjustments as needed for what we all think as a team is best for the girls.
Mm-hmm. You know, and in our case, we have, you know, gone a little bit, not the opposite, but, you know, with Nina, who has cerebral palsy, she has always been included, and she used to have a paraprofessional, and it was not a one-on-one, but there was an extra support in the classroom to help the teacher, to the point that she doesn't have anyone anymore. Mm-hmm. She does get pulled for physical therapy, and she does have supports for adaptive PE, but other than that, she's completely included. Now, Diane, you have done homeschooling of your child with Down syndrome, and she attended a private school that was specifically for kids with disabilities.
That's right. Exactly. Mary Ellen was number 5 on the list in the chain, in the food eating order. And I homeschooled all my other kids. So when she was born and she was diagnosed with Down syndrome, my immediate reaction was, well, of course I'll homeschool her. I've homeschooled all my kids. And it never even crossed my mind that I would send her to school. The funny part was that it crossed everyone else's mind. And immediately people said, you're not going to homeschool her, are you? And I was like, why wouldn't I homeschool her? I homeschooled all my kids. What would, you know, why would I do that? If we're going to talk about inclusion, why would I exclude her from what I'm doing with the rest of my kids? So I did homeschool her until she was about 2 years ago. And there's a school here locally that I'm a teacher by trade. So I'm always looking for options in education that I can feel myself wrapping myself around that. Homeschooling is one of those things. I just love homeschooling. I loved teaching as it was. And so when I toured the school, I toured it every year from the day we moved here to the day we enrolled her. It was a tradition. I think one year I'll send her to Madonna Learning Center. Every year I did this tradition, and I did finally send her. And it was such a great fit for her. It just, she thrived and she grew. And it is a private school just for individuals with intellectual disabilities. But for her, for Mary Ellen, she just absolutely bloomed. We did remove her this year, not because of the school. I still love that school. We call ourselves the Madonna family. The teachers are incredible. They have therapy built into their program. It's just a great scenario. We removed her for health reasons. She right now is going through some difficult times with her blood pressure, and we're just trying to keep that stable and figure out, is it an emotional situation that has driven her to that? And so for now, we're back to homeschooling, and she's as happy as can be and thriving again. My dream would be, Madonna, if you're listening to me, my dream would be a blend. I would love to continue homeschooling her. I just started a homeschool group for families who are homeschooling and have a child with Down syndrome. I started because some people don't believe that that's truly homeschooling anymore if you do both homeschool and enrollment in a program. I'm a firm believer that homeschooling can happen sometimes even at night at the end of a school day if they're in public school. Everyone is in their own way partially homeschooling their children and or fully homeschooling them. But my dream would be to do a mixture and have her enrolled in pieces that are working for her at Madonna and have her homeschool for the other pieces that are working for her at home. And, Madonna and I, we've talked about that. Right now we're trying to get her health stuff under control before we even, get ourselves talking about something like that. But
so Diane, these aren't my kids with special needs, but my boys, my typical boys, are in a program just like what you're talking about. They actually go to school 3 days a week, and they get all their instruction from all their teachers. Then they're in high school. They're both in high school, and then they're home on Tuesdays and Thursdays, doing the work that their teachers assigned. So we do have that blend, and so they've both been homeschooled since kindergarten. And and in May I'm about to graduate my very first.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So my oldest is 26 and he went on to mechanical engineering and then another mechanical engineer and then a nurse. So it does work. So I'm proud of you.
I'm pretty excited, I have to say.
It's a huge accomplishment for mom.
But I think the theme I'm seeing in all three of us that I think is important to point out is that because you choose one thing doesn't mean it's the end all be all. And we were kind of discussing this earlier. And I'm about to be in this situation. We have an IEP meeting coming up next week, and we're going to make a decision about Oksana's middle school placement. It is not going to be easy. When you've got a child with medical needs and emotional needs and severe behavior issues, that is not an easy placement to make. But when people come to me and say, I don't know what to do, I often say, do your work, do your homework, educate yourself on your options, listen to your heart, make the best decision you can, but that doesn't mean you can't change it. Right. Things can be changed. And all three of us have changed our child's school setting based on the needs at that time. So that's what I tell people. You can change mid-year.
Mm-hmm. So let's go by different school options and let's all talk about the pros and the cons. Okay. So let's talk about the self-contained classroom. Let's not focus on the school yet, but just on the self-contained classroom. What are the pros? What are the cons?
Well, and again, I think it's going to depend on the child, because for Oksana, the pro is that small environment. It's that very individualized setting. It's an environment where she can then go be successful with typical children, because she has that place for when she cannot be successful. Mm-hmm. For Anya, and I have to say, our self-contained classrooms are phenomenal. So some people hear self-contained classroom and they have had horrible experiences. Right. So I cannot say that. We have had amazing experiences. Anya has been with the same teacher in her self-contained room since the beginning. And there she gets enrichment in her education that is specific to her at her level. She has friends in there. Oksana does too. So that's been the pros for us.
So it's really the classroom size and the opportunity of friendships of kids that are more their peers.
Yeah. Yes.
Because I do feel like that's a very important piece, especially as kids get older. Who are their friends? And we haven't talked much about friendships for our kids with disabilities, but I think we would all agree that it's hard. Mm-hmm. It's mm-hmm. very hard to find that really good friend. And one of the cons I feel is that they're more likely to find that friend in a self-contained classroom where everybody is like them. Mm-hmm. And there's the smaller, maybe you have you have teachers and paraprofessionals that have more training, mm-hmm. that are not willing, but able to work better with their kids.
You said one of the cons is finding the friend there, but you meant pros, didn't you?
Oh, yes, I meant that. All pros. I'm so glad you are listening. Yes, no, this is a good thing. A pro is to be able to find the friends that are like you and that there's a smaller size and that you have teachers and paraprofessionals that are going to be trained, because not all paraprofessionals are trained when it comes to disability.
They're a support person.
They're just a support person. But from what I have witnessed, and it might not be the case, is that the paraprofessionals that end up in those self-contained classrooms usually do have some sort of training.
Yeah.
Or they have invested a little bit more in those particular paraprofessionals. Now, the con, which we've talked about, for me, is that there's been times when my daughter was a part of it, is that I did not feel that she was pushed enough. Like the expectations were not the expectations that I would hope a school would have for her. And also for my daughter in particular, she was terrified of some of the kids in there. And when she was, when we were 3 or 4, it's hard to understand, to explain to a child why some other kid might scream all the time or be loud. And my daughter has some sensory issues, so any noise or anything was really very overwhelming. So that could be a con. But I don't know what, Diane, you would add.
For us, the con would be Mary Ellen, this year with her health issues, she had more, and this is not the con, with her health issues, she didn't have as much energy. When she had that low blood pressure, it reduced her energy. So I think that that's not the con, but it gave her more time to observe, because everyone was being more careful with her because we couldn't figure out why she didn't have the energy. And so in that observation time, she did start mimicking other students' behaviors. And if they had any sort of, tick, she came home with it, so we had this array of a person that we had never seen before by the time we did pull her back out. And, some of it was the health, some of it was not feeling well, but some of it was the mimicking because of having time to watch and then mimic. The first 2 years, we did not have any mimicking. So, I do think that the health was related to the mimicking, because she was, when you don't feel good, you're just going to observe. I was a special needs student myself, and I went to the school of observation my whole education. And when I think of your daughter, Ellen, I was put into classes for kids with special needs, that's what we called it at the time. I was in special education, and I was severely hearing impaired in the deaf world, and nobody caught that. So I sat with kids that were nothing like me. And I could, when you said that about your daughter, I could feel that, because that's what I felt in those classroom settings my whole life. And felt like, why am I here? And I begged my mom. By the time I got to high school, I begged her to get me out. It was like jail sentence for me. And she did get me out. She went to the school and said, we need to take her out of there. We don't know what's wrong with her, but we need to take her out of there. And then I went on to get D's and F's, and they passed me. And I felt so much better. And now I went on to become a teacher. So, my empathy for what that would feel like if you are one who's like, is this where I belong? Should I be in this setting? If you're the individual feeling that, I have such great empathy for people who you can tell that's not the right setting.
Which I feel like you bring a really good point, that as parents, we need to listen to our kids.
Absolutely.
And when you're hearing a child saying, I don't like it, I don't want to go to school, sometimes it's not just, I don't feel like it. There might be an underlying cause of why they are not feeling comfortable and they don't want to be there. So it's our role as parents to be detectives and try to figure out, why do they not want to be there? What does it mean? Because Diane, you were more able to explain and express yourself. I think about Nicole being little. She never told us, I am scared of so-and-so, but it was more her behaviors in response, hiding, covering her ears, not wanting to sit next to a particular child. And I really like that you brought up the mimicking, because I think that is true in a self-contained classroom. So if we move on to what would be an inclusive classroom, that's something that I have advocated for my daughter, is that she needs positive peer models to mimic that positive behavior.
Yes.
So if we then transition to talking about an inclusive classroom, that is a huge pro.
Definitely.
That our kids have positive role models in behavior and friendship and interactions and play. I mean, development in general.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's just the huge pro. That's the umbrella pro over what inclusion is and why so many of us love it. One of Anya's dear friends is a little girl from her regular classroom, and she's all she talks about. And this little girl just loves her and sends home notes that say, "You're wonderful." And then Anya smacked her the other day, but that's beside the point.
That's like Nicole and her friend.
It's great. Anya definitely has gotten some great peer modeling of behavior in particular in that class.
And let's pause to say that our kids have something to contribute to those classrooms as
Without
well.
a doubt.
So it's not just the typical peers being a good influence on the kids with disabilities. The kids with disabilities are in turn providing and contributing to their classroom.
Right.
You know, and the other kids are learning about differences, and that everybody has different gifts and everybody has different talents, and that everybody has something to contribute, and that other people look at the world different and they approach the world different. And those are great skills to develop when you're a kid, you know, to learn patience, to learn tolerance, empathy, all those things. So that is a pro, not just for our kids.
No, exactly. I'd say in my homeschooling world that I'm doing more inclusion here, because the numbers of individuals that have disabilities that are homeschooled aren't quite as large as the number of kids who are typical who are homeschooled. And so they are surrounded by, and that was one of the things I said to my husband immediately, I've got to get her into her activities with homeschooling, because she'll be good for them. And all the homeschool moms, when they heard I took her out, were like, can we do this? Can we do this? Because they want their child, they're asking basically to have their child around a person with a disability. And so it's the same effect in the homeschool community that you all have in the public school situation. And people don't realize that, but it is really one of the benefits of homeschooling for other homeschoolers.
Great point.
My daughter.
Yeah, great point. Thank you.
So if you can think of another pro, because I'm ready to go into the con, because right now it's close and dear to me in the inclusion classroom, is that although my daughter has good friends and girls that include her, it is not a true friendship. And by that I mean, Nicole has true friendships with her sisters. When they play, it's equal. When they interact, it's equal. With her friends from school, they're nice to her, they include her, but you know, my husband described it one time, it's like she's always trying to keep up. Nicole is always trying to keep up with them, and she can't quite get there. Every time she can't quite get there. So for me, that is the con. Now, if there was another little girl with Down syndrome in the classroom, or another girl with a disability that she was developmentally in the same place, then maybe she would be able to have that, but she doesn't have that completely. So,
and haven't you struggled with that with Nina too?
I have a little bit. I think she's doing better as she's becoming more of a preteen, and as she has grown and developed and learned to control her emotions, you know, and all of that. So she's doing much better, to the point of now we're talking about, you know, typical things that girl drama of 4th grade, such as, no, just because you get angry with your friend, you don't say, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. You know, like we talk about those things that happen. And I'm not saying that my daughter is doing it and nobody else does it. It's just like what they're doing right now in 4th grade.
It's typical.
Yes. So we're dealing more with that. Now, the pro with inclusion, that can also be a con, is that most kids have some sort of a paraprofessional, maybe a one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great because it allows for inclusion. But I do think that sometimes having an adult around a child prevents other kids from having that typical relationship. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that from friends who are adults with disabilities who had a one-on-one. They didn't like it. And the older they got, the harder it was because the other kids wouldn't approach them because they always had that adult.
Mm-hmm.
So they couldn't be free in their conversation or hanging out because there's always an adult. And I haven't seen much of that in the show Speechless because, JJ always has someone who's there for the voice, but it's still an adult. So I wonder if at some point they will address that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So those are my feelings in our, inclusive environment. My daughter does not have a one-on-one, but she's in a classroom that has the extra support of a paraprofessional. Some paraprofessionals are great and they help the kids work towards independence, but some paraprofessionals are also very motherly, grandmotherly, and they don't necessarily encourage that independence, but they're really nice, which is good, but I want someone to push my child.
Yeah.
Not to do things for her. So that's also the pro and the con of the paraprofessionals in an inclusive classroom, inclusive setting.
Yeah.
But what would you add to that?
Diane, you have anything?
Coming from a teacher's perspective, and I always have to come from a teacher's perspective because I am one, and I'm going to go in a direction that has nothing to do technically with your kids, but we're not funded for this to be implemented the way I dream full inclusion should be implemented. It's only 20% funded. IDEA is only 20% funded. And if that, it depends on where those dollars even actually go when they get to where they're supposed to be going. So what I hear from my colleagues is we don't have the money to do it the right way. It's just disappointing because we don't have the funding to do it the right way. And I have to concur. I was a teacher who believed in inclusion. I had to do it though early on in my own ways to make it work. But we never really have been given the tools and the funding to make it be done the way I think it could be done. Mm-hmm. That's unfortunate. Mm-hmm. And I think all kids with disabilities are suffering from that. I think that's across the board, no matter which school you live in, if you're only getting 20% of the real money that should be coming in for that student, we really won't see what true inclusion is like until that funding ever comes through.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about inclusion in the way we should be talking about it. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going to want to include at that point.
Yeah. Yep.
We're not there, so that's the only con I can think of, but that's from my teaching perspective, and it's
Mm-hmm. And I would agree with that. And that's a good thing to point out. I feel sometimes as a parent, I have really high expectations for all the teachers and for the aides and for everybody for my kid. And I have to remember, one, they have a lot more students than just my kid. Mm-hmm. And realistically, how much can they even do because of, like you said, the funding and the services, and sometimes even the reality, talking about therapists, the physical therapist at my daughter's school, this elementary school, she could be there full time and be helping kids all the time. However, she covers like 3 or 4 schools.
Yeah.
Because districts only have so much money, or choosing to only use so much money, regardless of how it is, to service the kids that need the help. So, So there's a little bit that as parents, we hopefully understand and we're willing to work with the school. And I think ultimately boils down to that. Are we willing to work with the school, and are we willing to compromise? Because I could say, you need to do this, and I'm not backing down. And then how is that going to affect my relationship with the school, and staff and educators, but also realistically, is it going to be done well? Mm-hmm. Or is it just going to be done to put a Band-Aid, on the situation?
To shut you up.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something good to talk about. So let's talk about homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to homeschooling, the pros and the cons. So Diane, you start us because you're the one with the most experience from years of homeschooling Mary Ellen.
So everyone thinks the con is socialization, and I'm going to just come right out on the front end and tell you that is not a concern. There is so much happening in the homeschooling world.
Yeah.
That, it's, if anything, wouldn't you say, Erin, it's like, we need to stop doing some stuff. Because
that is not a valid argument anymore at all. I'm not saying it wasn't back when people first started homeschooling. That is no longer a valid argument. If you're still using that, educate yourself on what homeschoolers are doing.
Exactly. That's a great, my oldest will be 27 in August, and I can tell you we jumped into homeschooling when he was initially 3, and then when he was in 2nd grade completely again. And we went on field trips literally when he was 3. It was that organized, and that he's 27. So that was 24 years ago that it was already newsletters, field trips, meetings, and it's never slowed up. If anything, it's only, there's just more offered. It just doesn't stop. So we can wipe that one off the table. So everybody knows that's not a con.
Let's wipe it off the table for typical kids too, while we're at it.
Yes,
off the table.
Exactly. And for my family, I would say a con would be it would be from the mom side of it. I homeschooled Mary Ellen until she was 9. It was high intensity till she was 9. And my sisters are my biggest cheerleaders, and they'll say she's doing so well because it was you worked so hard. But I literally slept to get a break. That I went to bed to get my break, and because she was a runner. You didn't worry about that. I'm severely hearing impaired, so I couldn't understand her. I worked very hard on her speech, and we struggled with that because her speech, it's hard for her to form sense. So the burnout rate is what I would say. And I don't think, she's not burnt out. She's as happy as she can be. She loves being home. She's thriving. She thrived before I sent her. She's very well behaved in public. This will be a con. Can I switch back to cons for a second? Because it was so intense, and because I had to correct her, and she had that one-on-one correction from me, Mary Ellen, you need to sit and you need to hold your hands this way. And so her behaviors, when she did go to school, they were just like, wow, she's so well behaved and she's so well mannered. And, holy cow, this is incredible. But that burnt me out. I was tired from the high intensity of So my second time around now, so I'm back to, we put her in school. My second time around, I got smarter this time. I looked for families who were homeschooling their kids, and I just couldn't find them that first time around. So she was in school for 2 years and 2.5 years, and we pulled her back out again just this year, a month ago. You want to talk about, you can switch gears at any moment. We were sitting in the pediatric cardiologist. He looked at my husband, my daughter Megan, and I, and he said, her blood pressure is at 50 in action. That's dangerously low. We've got to find out what it is when she's sleeping, because if it hits 30, it's very dangerous for her. That minute, my husband looked at me and we said, we got to get her out of school because something's stressing her. We didn't know it was stress in the moment. We had to rule out a ton of other things, but and we still are, because it could be anything else. But we did pull her out to bring her home to kind of see if we couldn't get that, but the point is you can switch at any point. We did, that was a Friday, and we contacted her lovely school on Friday night. And so we're bringing her home on Monday. So you can change things as quickly as you need to with your kids, no matter where they are. But the pro is she does thrive in the homeschool environment. She models her brothers and her sisters exactly. I mean, when she's around them, the ante is upped. Her personality is much more light. She's happier. But I love the school setting for her. I love her school. Which we could talk about that pro and con too real quick if you want me to, Ellen. I don't know if you want me to switch to that.
Let me throw in something on homeschooling really quick. We have a very different situation because our kids came from other countries at 5. They were kindergarten eligible. But we did not put them in school until they were 6. And they started kindergarten at 6. So they're older for their age. But like you, when Oksana first came home, I went, of course I'll homeschool her. of course, I homeschool my other kids. Why wouldn't I homeschool her? For me, the con, and of course we've got the adoption in there, was A, she has an attachment disorder. Oksana needs me to be her mom and nothing else. That's A. B is her delays were so significant that it was to give her what she needed, it would take away from my boys who were already like in middle school. And I needed a break from her. And so school has been the biggest blessing ever for us. And for Anya, it was just a lot of the same things, except that she was just absolutely wild. That first year we had her home was an absolute joke for homeschooling my boys because she literally had just come out of an orphanage, you know? So school has been a wonderful, wonderful blessing for my girls, and homeschooling has been a wonderful, wonderful blessing for my boys.
So let me talk a little bit about homeschooling, because I have not officially homeschooled my kids with disabilities. However, during summers, I try to have some sort of, a routine, which includes homeschooling. And this is what I feel. The con is that I have to be 100% invested or it doesn't work.
Bingo.
Because for my kids, especially with Nicole who has Down syndrome, I have to be so structured and have such a set routine for it to work that it ends up controlling the rest of everything that we do. But then the pro that I see, which is, I think it's a big pro, is that I don't think when it comes to academics, nothing beats homeschooling.
Yeah.
I feel like academically, I do such a better job than the teachers and professionals. And I feel bad saying it. However, I see that she has a one-on-one just with me, and we can work on reading, writing, math concepts, whatever it is. We can get creative. Because I know her better than anyone else. I know what's going to motivate her. I know what's going to get her to want to work. But at the end of the day, though, again, a con, she's kind of frustrated with me because I've been with mom all day long and she's making me work. And it just takes that chunk. But academically, honestly, I do love homeschooling. And I would do it for all my kids. And I homeschooled my oldest for a year. And she asked to go to public school. She said, Mom, I love you, but I really like to be at school with friends. And I ask her all the time. Now I get to claim that I taught her to read and write, because we did that at homeschooling. And as a mom, honestly, that felt really good that I'm the one that taught her that. I can't say that necessarily with my other two girls, but I can say that a lot of the gains that Nicole has made is because of the time that we have spent really structured time working together. And I've always said, if I really want her to be this super, not, above average, but, if I really wanted her to be doing better in academics, the best thing I could do is homeschool. But
I think what I'm
so much more.
Yeah. What I'm loving about this whole discussion is there's no right way, right? You have a kid who you homeschooled her and she said, please put me back in school. My boys found out that they had a friend who was homeschooled who wanted to go back to school. And they said, why on earth would someone do that? Right. And so every family and every child is so, in my family, I have public school and homeschool. Every family is so different. So different.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about your school.
Yes. Let's talk about the schools for kids with disabilities.
Yes.
Pros and cons.
Yeah, the private school setting. So for us, I think our school is unique. I think that many communities have that setting, but I'm not so sure that they're all using the same model that's happening at Madonna. And I have to say they have a winning model. It's really something I've not really seen. I think other communities have something like it. Like I think the Rise, that's not inclusion, right? In Texas.
I don't know.
I've heard that's fabulous too. But for us, the pros were her teachers are phenomenal. I mean, they are extraordinarily trained. It is, when you talk about concentration on the teacher understanding how to teach the student and how to meet the student and how to get gains out of the student, you're talking about this whole staff. I mean, that's what they focus on. That is what they do. And the first two years, like I said, we didn't have any of the mimicking because they're so good at breaking that mimicking up. They really pride themselves on not being that school that kids walk out and aren't individuals themselves.
Right.
And so, honestly, the pros there, one, it gave me a break. I knew she was safe.
Yeah.
I knew that everybody liked her. She was at the belle of the ball. I mean, I would walk in, they would be, "You're Mary Ellen's mom." And I'd be like, "I am." She was everyone's friend. She had dear friends. I mean, she truly made friendships there. When I show her pictures, she calls them her sisters. Taking her out was the hardest decision I ever made. Putting her in was the hardest decision I ever made. Taking her out was even harder. If it wasn't health related, if I thought it was just purely behavioral, which I thought for the year I thought it was, maybe she was, becoming a teenager and was possibly hormonal and all that kind of stuff, until it became medical, until the doctor looked at us and said, her blood pressure is dangerously low. You need to change something. I would not have taken her out because I loved it that much.
So was there a con?
The con became her mimicking, but that wouldn't
have happened. Right.
That became the con. And that was where it even became the con for them because they weren't seeing her mimic a lot at school. She would come home with it. And my husband used to always say, if she ever changes, we need to bring her home. And we don't want her to, of course we want her to grow in great, strides, but she was digressing. And I think it was the health that was making her, whatever it is that's shaking up her health world right now. So that became the con. Prior to that, I can honestly tell you the only con was the public telling me that I should not be doing that because it wasn't, that school shouldn't exist. And, that broke my heart because this school is what's right for many families. And so
that's right.
Others to say, we're hoping that one day that school goes away. That wouldn't be a good thing. This is a really good fit for many people. And I do hope to get her back, wanting to go back there again and getting her health back in order. So we plan to return her back to that setting when we feel like it's a good fit for her again. But that truly was the only con. I sometimes was a closet Madonna mom, not locally, because locally people do know the quality of the education and it's highly regarded here. But I will say that anyone who would know me in the broader world, the Down syndrome community, of course she went to private school, but I didn't discuss really what the setting was. Slowly other people did it for me. And all of a sudden people were contacting me going, "Do you really feel like it's right that you have her in that setting? Don't you think that's wrong? Shouldn't she be included?"
I'm not going to comment on that.
That was the con. The con was what I felt emotionally by other people, sharing
telling you how you should educate your own child.
Which maybe we can.
I love this circle right here because you guys are so uplifting to each other. And
but you bring a good point that even within the disability community of parents, we can put on a lot of guilt and expectations on each other.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to education, it feels like when we talk about it, the holy grail
is inclusion.
But inclusion is not always the best option for every child.
Bingo.
And I don't know if you have heard about the Down Syndrome School of Orange County. It's the Down Syndrome Foundation of Orange County. That's what it is, the Down Syndrome Foundation of Orange County. This is in California. And they actually produce a lot of learning material, but I'm positive they have a school that's only for kids with Down syndrome. Now, I'm telling you, if I lived in Orange County, I would be on the waiting list to send Nicole to that school. And it's only for kids with Down syndrome, but I would want her to go there. And I would not be fighting for inclusion, in the regular public school.
And if someone else wouldn't, that's okay too.
Right. Yes.
That is okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm just real quick, I'm going to talk to our specialized school experience. Very different than yours because ours was for kids with severe behavior issues, and the section she was in was also for kids with autism. So yes, ours wasn't behaviors as much as language.
Okay. Okay.
And she actually had her intellectual disability is such that she didn't understand it and catch a lot of it, which really was good, but it was definitely there. But this is what I will say. In that school, she wasn't the bad one.
Aw.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't the bad one. And so there's a place for those schools.
That's right.
And she's not in it anymore. She's gone and she's successful again, back in her self-contained setting. I don't know if that will stay that way, but for now it is. So,
And you know, our kids change as they grow, and
yes.
they change as they have new challenges. So the best setting for them this year might not be actually this week, right? Might not be the
Right.
best setting for them next week. And of course, our role as parents is to always advocate for what we do feel is right for our children. And if we do know that an inclusive environment would be the best for our kids, we do need to advocate for that. You know, which I would do that if the school said Nicole has to go back to a self-contained classroom.
Absolutely.
I would fight it because I know that's not the best thing for her right now. Will it be the best thing for her in middle school? I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, you know, and that brings up the point of I'm glad we have options. You know,
Yes.
Yeah.
I can bring it back to myself and growing up and being put into a special needs classroom for kids who had developmental disabilities and sitting there going, why am I in here? I don't understand why I'm in here. And really they just lumped up. If you ever look at the history of the hearing loss community, the deaf and hearing loss community, most of us that's what happened to us. We were put into special needs classrooms. My friend is an audiologist and she brings that up to me. That's the history of that. You know, unless they truly defined you as hearing loss, you just got lumped in with everybody else. And so now today, hallelujah, you know, we are way past that. We are, you know, and we have choices, you know, and that's the best.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
So maybe as we wrap up,
and we don't have a freebie.
We don't have a freebie this time, but if you have not signed up to my email list, if you go to ellenstump.com/episode 20, if you scroll down, I do have the survival guide for special needs parents. So if you don't have the survival guide for special needs parents, go and get that, and that will be your freebie. So we talked about pros and cons for school choices for our kids with disabilities, and we have concluded there's no right answer.
That's right. That's a good conclusion.
I mean, ultimately, there's no right choice. Do try to find the solution that best works for your kid, but that could change, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And find people who support you.
Yes.
That's a good point.
This little setting right here is so uplifting and so supportive. I'm going to walk away and go, man, that was not just fun, but also helpful to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have a group for homeschoolers that we started a week ago, and there's like 180 people in there already.
Wow.
Wow.
And it is called Homeschooling and Down Syndrome Questions and Answers. Find it if you want support. And it's for families who are not homeschooling, but they're curious about it and would they like to, or they are homeschooling, because people do need that support. They need that parachute that if I decide on a Friday I'm going to homeschool on a Monday, I'll have the information and the support to do it. Or I'm curious and I don't know if I could do it. But the support is, I think, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Can you link that, Ellen?
Yeah. Is that a Facebook group, Diane?
It is a Facebook group.
Okay. And what's it called again?
It's called Homeschooling. Let me make sure I've got the name right. Homeschooling and Down Syndrome Q&A.
Okay. Yes. I will find it and I will link it in the post for people that want to find it.
It's a lively, active group and anyone is welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
So, Diane, thanks for joining us.
Yes,
I'm so
thank
excited.
you.
It's
so fun.
It's nice to do this with my friends.
Awesome Friday afternoon kind of thing.
Yes. So leave us a review.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that we love your reviews. And you probably have not left a review because there's only like 6 of them in there. So we want to hear what you have to say. Was that a good request for reviews, Erin?
Yeah, you go for it, girl.
Okay.
I keep
that didn't
telling them, submit your reviews so Ellen will leave you alone.
Yes. It didn't sound too desperate, right?
No, you're good.
So thanks everybody for joining
us. Next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.